until you see the core side of it.
And what you're looking for is the story behind the news.
We bring it to you from Lagos, the commercial capital of Nigeria.
Giving you all sides and political stories round the clock.
Every detail from the start line to the final whistle.
CoreTV News, expanding your view.
Good evening, CoreTV News on the hour. I am Tolu Ojewumi. The new Inspector General of Police, Suleiman Abba, on Thursday evening turned up at the presidential villa for a closed-door meeting with President Jonathan, who was accompanied by outgoing police chief Mohammed Abubakar, who told journalists that he was leaving the police a fulfilled man.
What a good journey. 35 years is not a joke, and I think it's an opportunity for me to thank the people of Nigeria, particularly Mr. President, for giving me the opportunity to serve as #1 cop in Nigeria. And it's been quite challenging, doubting, but a good journey. I thank God for this.
What do you expect the man succeeding you to, how do you expect him to face the challenges that you have?
Well, as,
you're just leaving behind.
As somebody who has been in the police for quite some time and experience, he has the knowledge, he has the expertise. I expect him to take the police to the next level from where I left it.
From here, where do you go?
Where do I go? Home.
Yes.
Most challenging.
Are you going to family now? Going to politics?
No.
No, sir. Just a minute. 1 minute. Okay, congratulations. Let them know. Okay. Let them know. He said that I will not do anything. Just leave. So, congrats, sir. Congratulations.
IG, what do we expect from them going forward?
IG, sir. What innovations are you going to bring? Don't jump the gun.
National Security Advisor Sambo Dasuki has reaffirmed the government position that it had no hand in the recent gun and bomb attack on former head of state Muhammadu Buhari. Dasuki told State House correspondents that as far back as February, the Boko Haram had said Buhari was an infidel that must be dealt with.
There was a threat as far back as February this year issued by Sheikh Au, calling them infidels by name and by position, and saying that they were in trouble, they were going to see. Because the first thing that happened, instead of looking at what are the issues, people jumped to conclusion, certain statements were, the government is responsible. Well, the government was not responsible. And if you say government was responsible in case of General Buhari, why didn't you say the same thing in case of Sheikh Dahir Bauchi? And we said it not because we had facts, but because it is what sells the papers. That is the unfortunate thing. And we tried to show, look, there is this issue. It was not only General Buhari, not only Sheikh Dahir Bauchi, but there were some other leaders who were mentioned too. And that is the thing. So it's still calling on the press to be very, very mindful what you put out there, what you carry. Even if somebody is foolish enough to say something stupid, you shouldn't help him spread it. You should be the sane voice there when our senses take leave of us.
In the meantime, Nigeria has raised over 60 billion naira for the Boko Haram Victim Support Fund. The amount was realized from donations from the public and private sector at a special fundraising dinner hosted by President Goodluck Jonathan. The highest donation was from Tony Elumelo with 2.5 billion naira, while the chairman of the Victim Support Fund, Theophilus Danjuma, gave $10 million. Speaking at the occasion, Jonathan assured Nigerians that the government would not give up in its fight against terrorism.
Today, as we seek to raise funds to cater for the victims of terrorism in our land, we are doing this with every sense of responsibility to the citizenry. This is just one of the several steps this administration is taking to address this unfortunate development in the land. The fact that we are setting up a victim support fund does not mean we have accepted that terrorism is here to stay. No, never. Rather, this is just one of the short-term measures in our overall strategy against the enemies of peace and progress. We will not allow evil to overcome good. No, we will not.
The use of female suicide bombers has become a worrying development in the country. Recently, a 10-year-old girl strapped with a suicide bomber's explosive was intercepted by the police alongside her 18-year-old sister. Speaking on a flagship program, Code Digest, human rights activist Joe Oke Odumaki and public affairs analyst Dikpo Olayoku say a proactive measure is needed to stop the act.
Anybody that fired himself or herself up with bombs will know the likely effect. That is why there's a need for us to begin to study the psychology of these people. How did they get to that level? What made them to be hopeless? What made them to be so wicked as not to die alone, but to take some people along in a very brutal manner? Because bomb explosion is not a tea party. At times after the thing, you will see body parts scattered and littered in the place. So I think what we need to do, it should be the concern of everybody. How do we make sure that, yes, already we have, a lot of them are in their camps. And you never can tell, maybe some of them are in the next building. So how do we make sure that they don't visit maximum damage on Nigerians? So
the recent female bombers we've been having has assumed a worrisome and dangerous dimension. And if one comes to think of the fact that there's something called Stockholm syndrome. It happened in Sweden when a bank was raided and some people were held hostage. And something called victim emotional bonding. The victim had to bond with the abuser. So thinking of the fact that our Chibok girls have now spent 109 days, indoctrination can take place. That victim emotional bonding can take place. The abuser can be seen as a friend. And whatever the abuser pumps into the brain of the victim might be taken as the gospel truth. And no wonder we see even men disguised as women. Women are vulnerable. They need to be protected. And more than ever, government must do all within its constitutional responsibilities, which is protecting lives and property.
Meanwhile, a member of the Chibok community says he believes that Boko Haram has not been using some of the abducted schoolgirls as suicide bombers. Dr. Wakil Chibok told CoreTV News in Abuja that there is no proof that the abducted girls are behind the recent spate of suicide bombs. He was speaking against the backdrop of fears that the girls might have been indoctrinated after more than 100 days in captivity.
I don't think our girls are being used for suicide bombing. Anybody who tells you that one is not telling the truth. There are some men that dress like women, some of these suicide bombers. They put their women dresses and behave that they are women. Even the one that was caught in Kaduna, you know, he is a man, but he dressed in a woman dress. So nobody should, there's no evidence to prove that these girls were the one that were kidnapped and they were the one that were being used for this suicide bombing or something like that. I didn't see any evidence to agree to that.
As the August 9 governorship election draws near in Osun State, the expected arrival of security personnel is coming to fruition, but not without the backlash from Osun citizens. Rashid x-rays the measures put in place by security agents and the difficulties faced by residents. The report.
The Ogoluwa axis of the dual-carriage Bogon-Ibadan Road, also known as Ogoluwa Road in Osogbo, is practically the busiest due to its importance as it aids free flow of traffic. The traffic congestion on the road has increased due to the presence of security personnel. Journalists were not spared as some materials were confiscated by the security agents. A motorist, Alabi Alim, says he is surprised at the display of force and the resultant traffic jam caused by the security men.
I'm surprised because this is not the usual thing. It's not the normal thing because this is democracy. where I believe there is no need for police and so on, the rest. I don't know. That's why I say I'm surprised.
Ogolua area of Oshogbo have the secretariats of major political parties like the PDP and the APC. This APC chieftain blamed the sudden outburst by men of the state security as sporadic shooting was earlier reported in some parts of Oshogbo by the DSS.
It's not fair, or it's not proper, but we are Nigerians. So this kind of things is not good in the civilized countries, but we are in Nigeria. So they use power. Yes, it's too, this thing, they want to panic our people, not to come out to vote. That's their mission.
A journalist, Nii Babade, says the harassment of journalists by the security agents is uncalled for. He said if this continues, people would be intimidated during the governorship election.
I've noticed them myself, the way they've been, you see masked men on the street, you know. If it's about election, if it's the security is purported to be about the election, then the people on the street should be allowed to go on their normal duty and transact their business. It shouldn't be this masked men on the street blaring their siren and making people to be terrified.
This is the popular Ogolua Road in Oshogbo, where we have most businesses located, most especially political parties and even federal government apparatus like the Department of State Security Service. And it is their activities that is building this kind of hold-up. But most importantly, it is instilling fear in the minds of the people that if days to election, things like this are happening. What exactly will the day of election, the August night, what will it portend for the people of Osun? Rashid, CoreTV News, Oshogbo.
Osun State Governor Rauf Aregbesola has condemned the action of the Department of State Security. He described the sporadic shooting and recent harassment of journalists as unleashing terror on law-abiding citizens of the state.
All those who are here shooting indiscriminately to the air, covering their faces, they are acting against the law of Nigeria. They are acting against the law of Nigeria. Nigerian people pay their salary every month. Nigerian people bought the uniform for them, but we did not buy masks for them. Confirm. Nigerian citizens do not buy masks for our law enforcement agents. Any agent acting under the cover of the Nigerian Constitution cannot mask in the presence of law-abiding citizens of Nigeria. Anyone that does so is acting against the Constitution. We will warn them officially, after which we will take our action against them. They have no right. They have no right to come and harass us in our own land. This is our land. God bless you. And until the end of our term, I'm the legitimate authority to govern this place. I love that. My term, this first term ends in November. And until that time, I am still the governor. God bless you. I have legitimate authority to secure life of our citizens. Nobody, and there will be nobody can threaten and persecute us. We are here. We are here with the full body of the law. And we shall explore the law to the fullest to protect our lives and the part of our lives. We are here under the law. Nobody can act beyond the law. There is a law in Nigeria. We have a peaceful state. We have governed this state with the best effort possible to maintain law and order. Nobody can disrupt the peace of this state. We shall confront them if that is what they want from us.
Governor of the state of Osun, Rauf Aregbesola there. Now, the Nigerian authorities have placed 69 people under surveillance as part of steps to prevent the spread of Ebola virus in the country. 2 persons have also been quarantined, while all entry points remain on red alert. The government, however, insists that there is still no cause for concern.
As at today, 59 persons altogether are either under quarantine or under surveillance. Those who are going to attend the same meeting in Calabar are all in Lagos under surveillance. All those who were in the same plane were going for that meeting. Actually, immediately the next day they had to be brought back through a special arrangement, brought back to be under. So currently they're under surveillance. The staff or persons who took care of him before the diagnosis who may not have exercised all the necessary care are also presently under quarantine. So that is what we're doing, and we said they will remain under this surveillance until a period of 3 weeks at least has actually elapsed, because 3 weeks is the maximum incubation period. So it's only 3 weeks from the date of contact that we can certify them after testing them as well that they are free of the disease. So that is the situation.
So far, the Ministry of Health has not reported any additional infection anywhere in Nigeria apart from the person who came into the country and died. So far, there has not been any reported fresh case of any infection. What the ministry has stated clearly is that every step is being taken to control spread by ensuring that all people that had contact with the victim are monitored, quarantined, or surveilled to ensure that they also do not spread the virus just in case they're infected. But at the moment, there has not been any single additional incident of infection that has been reported. And this is important because we're beginning to see some panic reports, particularly in the social media, making all sorts of claims. And this is important because for me and for all of us, the media must be extremely professional.
Now we move to Ekiti State, where the civil servants have threatened to embark on total strike over the deduction of their salaries and non-remittance of cooperative fund by the state government. The workers demanded that the government expedite actions in paying the money or face strike. Rashid was there. He'll find in this report.
In a protest to the State House of Assembly, the workers said the deductions are unacceptable and demanded that their money be refunded. Chairman of the State Public Service Joint Negotiation Council, Oladipupo Johnson, said failure of government to pay the money will amount to industrial action.
Upward of 4 months now, and that is exactly what we are asking the government to pay. It's not a negotiating issue. It's an established fact. And we are just mediating to avoid this type of crisis we are now seeing. And we don't want it to go out of control. That's why we are intimidated. We are telling the government to expedite action between now and Friday and tomorrow to pay. Let me tell you, we are on 31st of July, and the salary for July has not been paid.
The workers told journalists that they had earlier given the government a 7-day ultimatum, but have not gotten any response.
We are protesting that we are unable to collect our deduction for our cooperative, which they have deducted for the past 4 months. It's for the cooperatives, from the cooperative. That means we are collecting our salary, and what they declared, they didn't give it to us. Why are they treating us like that? Let him give us our money.
Johnson added that the workers will not relent in pursuing their demands to a logical conclusion.
We shall take decision at appropriate time. Already we've given the government 7-day ultimatum. We expired last week, and we are still expanding it because the situation is ongoing. If by any means, if the government refuses to pay, by implication, you know what that means. It means that the government is insensitive to the needs and the welfare of workers, and they want them to die financially, prematurely on service, and then at appropriate time, at appropriate forums and organization structure, we are going to take decision.
While responding to the protesters, Commissioner for Labour and Productivity, Oluwole Ariyo, said government will do everything within its power to resolve the crisis.
So government has been looking elsewhere to ensure that salaries are paid as and when due. And the issue of the other deductions, the Accountant General said is looking at possibilities of ensuring that these ones are paid, because these are the entitlements of civil servants anyway. There's no way anybody can hold on to it.
Rashid, CoreTV News, Ado Ekiti.
Judicial workers have demanded a written undertaking from both the federal and state governments for the implementation of a judgment of the Federal High Court Abuja on the funding of the judiciary. The president of the Judicial Staff Union of Nigeria, Marwan Adamu, blamed the crisis on the Accountant General of the Federation, Jonah Otunla, for failing to begin implementing the judgment of the court. The court had in the judgment delivered on January 13, 2014, declared as unconstitutional the piecemeal approach of funding the state judiciary by various state governors. The workers had proceeded on the strike after the government failed to yield to the union's demand for compliance with the judgment. He said the union only embarked on strike after government's refusal to honor the 21-day ultimatum it had twice issued since February, and also on the basis of the government's willingness to start implementing the court order. In the meantime, Nasarawa State Governor Tanko Almakura is not prepared to comment on the ongoing impeachment process in the state. He told journalists shortly after the National Council of State meeting that he would only speak when he appears before the investigative panel.
Once I appear before the committee to investigate me, you hear all my comments.
And the federal government has launched the 10,000 affordable housing mortgage scheme. The scheme, according to Finance Minister Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, is private sector driven to help eligible Nigerians acquire homes through mortgage. 10,000 Nigerians are expected to benefit from mortgages ranging from 2 million to 20 million naira under the scheme.
It's no longer news that Nigeria has a housing deficit of 17 million units, but what is new is that government is rolling out a mortgage scheme to address the shortfall. The first step was made by the Finance Ministry in conjunction with the Housing and Land Ministry. Finance Minister Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala says 10,000 people will be the first beneficiaries of the private sector-driven government initiative.
We jointly declare this open. Ibrahim applied for a 2-bedroom flat, and we hear from the CEO of some trust that within 3 days you're going to get some answer from him about whether you qualify. So we are going to track him down the middle of next week to find out if we have delivered. Thank you very much.
There are, however, specific criteria that an eligible applicant must fulfill.
You know, sometimes in our tradition, you know, maybe the man where they're paying, both of them are paying for this thing, but he goes and files only his name. So we don't want the women to be left out of this. So if both of you are paying for the property, then the name of the woman must also be part of it. Similarly, yes, I can see some of the men saying that the shoe can be on the other foot. Women, if your husband is joining you to pay for this property, his name must also feature on that. So that's the essence of that joint, because to avoid very palatable situations that arise, as we all know in our culture.
The scheme is to be powered by the Nigerian Mortgage Refinancing Company.
We can build 30,000 in 2 months. You see, but you see, those people are not going to put the amount of investment required if they don't have what? Offtake. It's the offtake that we are creating. You see? So once that offtake is there, people now, investors have the wherewithal to say, you know what, I can now invest into this country so that we can now build 20, 30, 40, 50,000 houses.
To benefit from the scheme, an applicant is expected to log into the project website where applications will be received.
Outside Nigeria, Israel and Hamas have agreed to a 72-hour ceasefire in the Gaza conflict. United States Secretary of State John Kerry and the United Nations have announced. Kerry said the two sides will begin the truce at 8 a.m. local time and that Israelis and Palestinians would enter talks in Cairo. The top US diplomat said the ceasefire would last for 72 hours unless extended, but Kerry warned that the ceasefire was not final.
Israel and the Palestinian factions have agreed that they are now prepared to implement a 72-hour unconditional humanitarian ceasefire. Israel will be able to continue its defensive operations for those tunnels that are behind its lines, and the Palestinians will be able to receive food, medicine, and additional humanitarian assistance, as well as to be able to tend to their wounded, bury their dead. This will last for 72 hours, 3 days, precious time. It is a lull of opportunity, a moment for the sides, the different factions to be able to come together with the State of Israel in an effort to try to address ways to find a sustainable ceasefire.
U.S. Secretary of State there, John Kerry, announcing the 72-hour ceasefire in Gaza. That's all. Thanks for watching. I'm Tolu Ojewumi. Good evening.